What if the very moment after death isn't darkness, but a reality more vivid, more breathtaking than life itself? Carl Jung claimed he saw it. And what he witnessed wasn't just a fleeting vision, it may have been a detailed map of the afterlife. But here's the twist: for decades, Jung kept parts of that experience locked away in his private notes. Notes the public was never meant to see. Today, you and I are going to open those pages together. We're diving into rare, unpublished insights, truths that challenge everything we think we know about death, the soul, and what waits for us beyond the veil. And this isn't just about curiosity. The 7 revelations you're about to hear could completely transform how you live today and how ready you are for what comes next. So if you've ever wondered whether there's more to the end than just the end, stay with me. Because once you see what Jung saw, you can't unsee it. Carl Jung once suggested that the greatest meeting of your life might not happen while you're alive, but in the very moment after death. According to Jung, when the body fades and the ego, that small, everyday version of you, finally falls silent, the soul encounters something far greater. He called it the self. Now, this isn't self in the casual sense, like your personality, your achievements, or how you see yourself in the mirror. The self is the totality of who you are. Every conscious thought you've ever had, every hidden feeling you've buried deep in your shadow, every unlived potential you've carried since birth, all of it united into one complete being. Jung described this as a kind of homecoming. Imagine living your whole life in a single room, only to step outside for the first time and realize you've been part of an entire palace all along. The self is that palace. And in Jung's vision, the encounter is overwhelming. It's not just seeing yourself, it's recognizing your truest form. Not the role you play for society, not the mask you wear for family or friends, but the full, radiant essence that's been quietly guiding you from the very beginning. One of Jung's favorite symbols for this wholeness was the mandala, a perfect circle, balanced and symmetrical, often appearing in dreams or visions at times of deep transformation. Across cultures, from Tibetan Buddhism to Native American sand paintings, the mandala has always represented unity, balance, and the eternal cycle of life. Jung believed this symbol wasn't just an artistic pattern, it was the psyche's way of showing us the blueprint of the self. So here's the question I want to ask you. If you could meet your truest self, would you recognize it? Think about that for a moment. Would you embrace it with open arms, or would you turn away because it's nothing like the identity you've built in this lifetime? This is where Jung's insight gets both inspiring and uncomfortable. Meeting the self, he believed, isn't always peaceful. For some, it's pure light, a joyful reunion with the best parts of themselves. For others, it can be disorienting, even frightening, because it means confronting the parts of us we've ignored, denied, or feared. And here's something fascinating. Many modern near-death experience accounts mirror what Jung described. People talk about meeting a radiant presence, sometimes perceived as a guide, sometimes as God, but often as themselves. A self that is vast, loving, and infinitely wise. Science can't fully explain this yet. But psychology offers one possibility, perhaps. What we meet is the total integration of our psyche, free from the limitations of the human brain and the constraints of physical life. This brings us to a deeper takeaway and why this matters to you right now. Jung didn't just share these ideas as philosophical curiosities. He believed that preparing for this meeting begins while we're alive. The more we work towards self-awareness, healing, and inner balance, now the more we can recognize and embrace the self later. This means facing our shadow, the hidden parts of our personality, and integrating them instead of pretending they don't exist. It means cultivating balance between our inner masculine animus and feminine anima energies, regardless of gender. And it means living in a way that's aligned with our deepest values, so we're not shocked by who we really are when the final moment comes. In other words, death doesn't change who you are, it reveals it. So, let me put this back on you. If tomorrow you stepped beyond this life and stood face to face with the self, your most complete, unfiltered essence, what would you see? Would it be someone you're proud to meet, or someone you've been avoiding your whole life? That's not a rhetorical question. It's an invitation. Because whether or not you believe in Jung's vision of the afterlife, one thing is certain: the work of meeting yourself doesn't have to wait until the end. It can start right here, right now. And in the next insight, we'll go deeper into the guide Jung believed could lead the soul through this encounter, and why that guide may have been appearing in human myths for thousands of years. One of Carl Jung's most unsettling insights about the afterlife is this: your shadow, all those parts of yourself you've denied, repressed, or hidden, doesn't just vanish when you die. We like to imagine that death will wipe the slate clean, that somehow we'll shed our mistakes, our fears, and the uglier parts of our character. But Jung saw it differently. In his view, the shadow crosses over with us. And if we haven't integrated it in life, it will meet us in death. So what exactly is the shadow in Jungian psychology? The shadow isn't evil in the cartoon villain sense. It's simply the collection of traits, impulses, and emotions we've pushed out of our conscious awareness. It might be your jealousy, your rage, your selfishness, but it could also be your hidden talents, your passion, your courage qualities you buried because they didn't fit your upbringing, your culture, or your self-image. The shadow is like a locked room in the house of your psyche. You can pretend it's not there, but it's still part of the building, and eventually you're going to have to open the door. Now here's where it gets profound. Jung believed that after death, in that transition between this life and whatever comes next, the shadow demands acknowledgement. You can't bypass it. You can't charm your way past it. You must face it. And the more you've avoided it in life, the harder that meeting will be. That's why shadow work, the process of becoming aware of and integrating these hidden parts of ourselves, is not just a trendy self-help term. It's a form of spiritual preparation. Think about it. If you've spent your life pretending you're only light, only good, only kind, then meeting the fullness of yourself after death could be a shock. But if you've already faced your anger, owned your mistakes, and embraced the complexity of who you are, then that final meeting might feel less like a confrontation and more like a reunion. Jung often warned that repressing the shadow doesn't make it disappear, it makes it stronger. In life, that shows up as projection, seeing in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. We accuse others of being greedy, lazy, or arrogant, when those same seeds lie dormant in our own hearts. Now imagine carrying that unacknowledged baggage into the afterlife. Imagine stepping into a realm of pure truth where nothing can be hidden, and suddenly there it is. Your shadow standing before you. The version of you you've been running from. It's no wonder Jung urged people to do the work now. Shadow work doesn't mean indulging your worst impulses. It means shining a light into the darker corners of your psyche, naming what you find there, and learning how to live with it. For some, that might involve journaling about moments of envy or resentment instead of brushing them off. For others, it might mean owning your ambition instead of hiding it behind false modesty. It's also about reclaiming lost strengths. Maybe your shadow contains the assertiveness you were taught was rude, or the creativity you set aside because it didn't seem practical. Integration means bringing those back into the light. From a spiritual perspective, integrating the shadow before death prepares the soul to cross over without unfinished business. You're not weighed down by denial or shame. You step into the next stage of existence as a whole being light and dark in balance. Here's a way to visualize it. Imagine the afterlife as a vast open mirror. Everything you are is reflected back at you. There's no editing, no filters, no good side. If you've made peace with that reflection in life, you can walk toward it without fear. If not, the mirror might feel like judgment itself. So let me ask you, if you died tonight, what part of your shadow would you be most afraid to meet? That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to empower you. Because unlike the moment of death right now, you have the power to change that. You can start small, have the uncomfortable conversation, admit the flaw you've been covering up. Give yourself permission to be fully human. As Jung put it, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And if the shadow crosses over with us, then maybe the most important work we can do in life is to meet it here first. In the next insight, we'll explore what Jung called the archetypal gatekeeper, and why this mysterious presence may be the very first encounter your soul has after leaving the body. Imagine stepping out of your body for the very last time. There's no heartbeat, no breath, and yet you are still here. But before you can even process what's happened, you realize you're not alone. In Jung's near-death vision, he encountered a figure unlike any he had seen in life, a psychopomp or soul guide. This was not an angel in the traditional sense, nor a loved one who had passed on. It was something deeper, something ancient. The role of the psychopomp is found in countless cultures across history. In Greek mythology, Hermes, the messenger god, also served as the one who escorted souls to the underworld. In ancient Egypt, that role belonged to Anubis, the jackal-headed deity who weighed the heart of the deceased against the feather of truth. And in many Native American traditions, there are spirit animals, or elders, whose sole purpose is to help the soul cross from the world of the living to the world of spirit. Jung's experience wasn't just a random dream figure. It carried the weight of an archetype, a pattern embedded in the collective unconscious of humanity. Across cultures, across centuries, we've told the same story in different symbols. At the moment of death, a guide comes for us. But here's where it gets fascinating. The guide doesn't look the same for everyone. For some, it may appear as a human figure radiating warmth and familiarity. For others, it may take the form of an animal, a shimmering presence, or even a stranger whose face you somehow trust. Jung believed this shape-shifting quality reflected the psyche's own language. The guide shows up in the form you're most ready to follow. Why does this matter? Because it suggests that the journey after death isn't a chaotic drift into the unknown. It's a process. And the first step is meeting the being who will walk that road with you. Think about the comfort this offers. In the face of our greatest mystery, what happens after the body dies, there's a universal story that we're not alone, that someone or something comes specifically for us. Jung also saw the psychopomp as more than just a post-death escort. He believed this archetype is alive within our dreams and visions even now. Ever had a dream where someone you didn't recognize was guiding you through strange, unfamiliar territory? Or where an animal seemed to lead you toward something important, Jung would say, that's the same archetypal energy preparing you for a transition, even in life. The appearance of a guide isn't always comforting at first. In myth, Hermes didn't sugarcoat the fact that he was leading souls to Hades. Anubis didn't offer sentimental goodbyes, he weighed your soul against truth itself. In many native traditions, the guide may test you asking questions or placing challenges in your path. This is key. The guide isn't just a comforting hand. It's also a mirror showing you whether you're ready for the next stage. So here's a thought experiment. If a guide appeared for you tonight, what form would it take? Would you follow without hesitation? Or would you resist, uncertain of where you're being led? Jung's insight here is powerful because it bridges psychology and spirituality. The psychopomp isn't just out there waiting for the moment of death. It's also a symbol for the part of you that knows how to navigate change. The same energy that will walk with you after death can guide you through endings in life, the loss of a relationship, the close of a chapter, even a deep personal transformation. And here's the deeper truth Jung uncovered by learning to recognize and trust your inner guide. Now you may recognize and trust the one who comes for you later. Death then becomes not a terrifying fall into darkness, but a journey with a trusted companion. In that way, the archetypal guide is both a promise and a challenge. The promise is that you won't walk alone. The challenge is that you must cultivate enough trust in yourself in life, in the unknown, to take the guide's hand when the time comes. As we continue, we'll explore the next insight Jung revealed in his near-death vision, one that suggests the soul doesn't just cross into a new realm, but passes through a threshold that tests its very essence. But before we move on, I'll leave you with this question. If your guide appeared to you tonight, would you be ready to follow? When people talk about the light at the end of life, we often picture something physical, a blinding white glow, almost like the sun breaking through the clouds. But what Jung experienced was different, far deeper. He described it not as light you can see with your eyes, but as light you feel with your entire being. This was not photons bouncing into the retina, it was awareness itself, pure consciousness. It's hard to explain this kind of light because it's not made of matter. It doesn't have a source like a lamp or the sun. It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Imagine being bathed in something that feels like truth, love, and clarity, all without a single word being spoken. Jung's description aligns closely with what modern near-death experience (NDE) research has uncovered. Across countless testimonies, people report entering a realm where light is alive. It's intelligent. It's not just illuminating their surroundings, it's communicating directly with their mind and heart. Some say it feels like the light knows them completely, every mistake, every triumph, every hidden corner of their soul. And yet, it radiates acceptance. Others describe it as merging with the light until the boundary between me and it disappears entirely. For Jung, this light seemed to represent the raw essence of consciousness, what's left, when the body, the personality, and even the ego have all fallen away. In his view, this was not a religious metaphor. It was the direct experience of what we are at the most fundamental level. And here's where it gets profound. If this light is consciousness itself, then we are not moving toward it. We are remembering it. The moment of death is less about going somewhere new and more about returning to what we've always been. Let's pause on that for a second. Think about how this changes the entire fear of dying. If death isn't a plunge into darkness, but a return to light, the same light that gave rise to your awareness in the first place, then what is there to fear? NDE researchers like Dr. Raymond Moody and Dr. Pim van Lommel have collected thousands of cases describing a being of light or a realm of light that mirrors what Jung saw. Across cultures, languages, and belief systems, the accounts are strikingly consistent. People often come back from this experience transformed, less afraid of death, more compassionate toward others, and more focused on what truly matters. Jung believed that the light also revealed the interconnectedness of all life. In that pure consciousness, separation didn't exist. There was no you and me, only a single, vast awareness expressing itself through countless forms. And when you see life this way, it's hard to go back to old patterns of fear division and ego-driven conflict. This raises a question that's worth asking yourself right now. If you knew that this light, this pure consciousness, was your true home, how would you live differently today? Would you hold grudges as tightly? Would you chase the same hollow goals? Or would you spend more time aligning your life with the truth that's waiting for you on the other side? Personally, I think Jung's account serves as a bridge between spiritual mysticism and modern psychology. It tells us that the light is not just a poetic image, it's an archetype of wholeness. It's the final destination of the individuation process he spent his entire career exploring. And maybe, just maybe, we can touch it before death. Jung hinted that moments of deep meditation, profound love, or awe-inspiring beauty can give us glimpses of that pure consciousness while we're still alive. Those moments when time stops, the chatter of the mind disappears, and you feel part of something infinite. That's the light peeking through. So perhaps the real message is this: don't wait until your last breath to remember the light. Learn to recognize it now, in the quiet, in the connection, in the stillness between thoughts. Because the more familiar you are with it in life, the more naturally you'll step into it when life ends. In the next insight, we'll explore the mysterious threshold. Jung described a kind of gateway that every soul must pass through before entering the full reality beyond. But for now, I'll leave you with this question. If you closed your eyes right now and let go of everything, would you recognize the light when it found you? When most people think of death, they imagine an ending, the final page of a book, the credits rolling after the last scene. But for Jung, his near-death experience revealed something radically different. He saw what he called the temple of the self, and in that vision, death wasn't a wall you crash into. It was a doorway. This temple wasn't made of stone or built by human hands. It was a vast, radiant structure, a symbol of the soul's complete integration, the place where every fragment of who you are finally comes home. Jung described it as if life had been leading him toward this moment all along. And stepping into it felt less like saying goodbye, and more like returning. This is where Jung's insight resonates deeply with ancient wisdom traditions. In Buddhism, death is often seen not as annihilation, but as a return to the source, the boundless awareness from which all life flows. In Taoism, there's the idea of fugui fugui, returning to the origin, much like a river flowing back to the sea. Think about that imagery for a moment. The river doesn't end when it reaches the ocean. It merges into something greater, yet its essence, the water, continues on. Could our consciousness work the same way? For Jung, this perspective transformed the meaning of life itself. If death is simply a continuation, then our time here isn't about racing against the clock. It's about preparing, integrating, so that when we walk through that doorway, we step into the next phase with clarity, wholeness, and peace. And here's the question that might change how you see your own life. If you knew you were walking toward a temple, a sacred place where nothing false could enter, how would you live today? What parts of yourself would you heal, forgive, or finally bring into the light? Before crossing that threshold, modern hospice workers often share stories of people in their final days experiencing a sudden peace, as if they've glimpsed this continuation for themselves. Some describe visions of loved ones waiting for them. Others speak of entering a vast, beautiful place that feels more like home than anywhere they've ever been. Jung believed that such experiences weren't hallucinations, they were hints of a deeper reality that our ordinary senses can't fully grasp. The temple of the self, in his view, was not only a destination after death, but a blueprint for life. Each act of self-discovery, every moment of shadow integration, every choice to live authentically, it's all part of building that inner temple brick by brick, long before you arrive. And that means you don't have to wait until your final breath to enter it. You can align with it right now. Through mindfulness, through honest self-reflection, through living in harmony with your truest values. The more you do this, the more seamless that transition becomes from this life into the continuation beyond it. Buddhism teaches that the way you live is the way you die. Taoism teaches that resisting the flow only causes suffering, but trusting it brings peace. Jung's vision mirrors these truths. Death isn't a sudden leap into the unknown. It's the next step in a journey you've been on all along. So perhaps the real question isn't, what happens after I die? It's, how am I preparing for that continuation right now? Because if Jung's temple is real, and countless spiritual traditions point to something like it, then every moment is an opportunity to shape the self you'll carry into that next chapter. And when the time comes to walk through that doorway, you might just find that you've already been there, many times before. What if I told you that the way you live today is literally shaping the world you'll wake up to after you die? Not as a metaphor, not as wishful thinking, but as an actual blueprint built moment by moment, choice by choice, while you're still here. Carl Jung believed that the afterlife isn't some random pre-assigned realm you stumble into. Instead, it's a continuation of the psychological and spiritual state you've cultivated throughout your life. In other words, your soul doesn't magically change the moment you die. You carry yourself, your light, your wounds, your unresolved patterns straight across the threshold. Think about that. If you've spent your life running from your shadow, avoiding the work of self-integration, that unfinished business comes with you. But if you've faced your inner conflicts, healed old wounds, and brought your masculine and feminine energies, your animus and anima, into balance, you step forward lighter, freer, and far more prepared for whatever comes next. Jung often spoke about the need to live authentically, to strip away the masks we wear for the world and stand in our truth. Why? Because the afterlife, in his view, is like a mirror. It doesn't lie. It reflects exactly what you bring into it. This idea echoes across spiritual traditions. In Buddhism, there's the belief in mind stream continuity, the idea that your consciousness flows into the next existence shaped by your present thoughts, words, and deeds. In indigenous wisdom, the soul's journey after death is often guided by the integrity and harmony it carried in life. Even in modern near-death experience, countless people describe entering a realm that perfectly mirrors their inner state. So here's the uncomfortable and liberating truth. If you want peace in the afterlife, you need to create peace now. If you want freedom there, you need to practice freedom here. And that doesn't mean chasing perfection. It means being willing to face yourself honestly. It means healing the parts of you you've been avoiding. It means reconciling your inner masculine, the force that drives and protects, with your inner feminine, the part that nurtures and receives. Jung saw this inner marriage, the harmony of anima and animus, as essential to wholeness. And when you achieve even glimpses of it here, it changes the very texture of your soul. You become more complete, less fragmented, which means you have less to fear when stepping into the unknown. So let me ask you if your afterlife was a direct continuation of your current state of mind. Would you be excited or terrified? Would you want to live forever in the mental and emotional landscape you've created for yourself today? The beauty of this insight is that it puts the power back in your hands. You're not at the mercy of fate or chance. You're building your next chapter right now. Every act of kindness, every shadow you integrate, every truth you live, they're all shaping the reality that awaits you. In the end, maybe the most important question isn't what happens after death, but what am I preparing to carry with me? Because one way or another, you will carry it. What if death wasn't the end, but just the turning of a great cosmic wheel? Carl Jung believed that the soul's journey might stretch far beyond a single lifetime, unfolding across multiple cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, all with one ultimate goal: to reach wholeness. This idea, sometimes called the eternal return, isn't unique to Jung. You can find it in the Buddhist teaching of samsara, the Hindu belief in reincarnation, and even in certain indigenous traditions that speak of the soul returning to earth to complete unfinished lessons. But Jung's interpretation was deeply psychological. For him, these returns weren't just about cosmic karma. They were about the self-seeking integration, piece by piece, life by life. Think of it like this. Imagine your soul as a vast puzzle. In each life, you find a few more pieces. You learn forgiveness here. You master courage there. In another life, you may learn compassion through loss or strength through adversity. And when enough pieces fall into place, the full picture of your truest self begins to emerge. Jung also saw this cycle as an opportunity, not a punishment. If we fall short in this life, we're not doomed forever. The universe, in his view, is patient. It gives us another chance and another until we finally integrate all aspects of our being: light and shadow, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. But here's the twist. While many traditions speak of this process as automatic, Jung hinted at something more empowering. He believed that the more self-aware you become now, the more momentum your soul carries into its next chapter. In other words, the deeper your personal growth here, the less unfinished business you bring into your next life. This raises some fascinating questions. If you knew you'd return, would you approach life differently? Would you take bigger risks for the sake of love, truth, and purpose? Would you spend more time healing old wounds so they don't follow you into another lifetime? Modern near-death experiencers sometimes echo this very concept. Many describe feeling as if they've been here before, or that the afterlife prepared them for another round, not as an exile, but as a continuation of a sacred journey. And think about the implications for how we treat one another. If the people in your life might return to cross your path again, maybe as a friend, a stranger, or even a child in your care, would you choose to resolve conflicts with more grace? Would you leave behind a better energetic footprint for your future self to inherit? The eternal return invites us to zoom out from the narrow frame of one lifetime and see the bigger tapestry. It asks us to imagine that nothing we experience is wasted, no lesson is ever lost, and no soul is ever truly finished until it reaches the fullness of itself. So maybe the real mystery isn't whether we'll come back, but what we'll come back as and how much closer we'll be to the wholeness we seek. And that is something only you can shape starting right now. So in the end, this isn't just Carl Jung's story. It's an invitation to pause, look inward, and ask yourself, where is my soul in its journey right now? Are you living in alignment with your truest self, or drifting further away from it? Because Jung's near-death vision wasn't a fantasy or ghost story. It was a mirror reflecting what might be waiting for all of us. And whether you see it as a psychological truth, a spiritual revelation, or something in between, the message is clear: life is more than these fleeting years. Every choice, every act of courage, every moment of healing shapes what comes next. So let me ask you, if you stood where Jung once stood, looking beyond the veil into that infinite horizon, would you be ready to take the next step? Or would you wish you had lived differently, loved more deeply, and faced your shadows sooner? This is why his insights matter, not because they tell us exactly what to expect after death, but because they challenge us to live now, in a way that prepares the soul for whatever lies ahead. And this is just the beginning. In our next video, we'll go even deeper exploring the 7 archetypes Jung believed could guide the soul after death. These aren't just mythic symbols, they could be the very forces waiting to meet you when the final chapter of this life closes. So stay with us. The journey's only getting started.